in terms of advisors and knowing, being able to figure out who you can trust and who's there to, just to sell you something that's maybe not a great proposition. And that sort of thing applies across the investment world. It's not just Māori entities. It's kind of the nature of the investment community. And if you've got money, there'll be plenty of people who want to help you deploy it so they can achieve advantages for themselves.
Well, welcome, Michael. Many people won't know that in those early years, you were involved with the tribe as a financial manager and then moved into other roles. So we're really pleased to be able to interview you and reflect on 30 years of the Raupatu settlement and that period of time that you played quite a key role. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
My touring waiwai is whangarei. Yes, I grew up there. Eldest of 6 boys. One of my brothers died as a baby, and along the way, 2 of my brothers been killed in accidents. My father died of a heart attack, age 32. We had good family support around us, grandparents, and I was certainly very close to my grandfather on my mother's side through growing up. We actually had a good upbringing, good life type thing. My mother was a teacher. So education was valued. She ran us around endlessly for sport. We all played lots of sport. I have 5 step brothers and sisters, as well as my grandfather. I'd say my stepfather had a significant influence on myself, although like when I was sort of 18 and so forth, him and I used to have very vigorous political discussions because he was him and his siblings were orphans in Liverpool. And he served in the Irish Guards in the later stages of World War II as a 16-year-old. So he had to be pretty tough to cope with that. And then I went to university, Auckland, and did a law degree and accounting degree. And worked in London and so forth. And
And it's really with that accounting financial background that you happened upon the tribe. Can you recall how the role that you played and how you got the job and your first impressions?
I was working in Hamilton for a business with great shareholders and a great team, but had been there for maybe 4 years, something like that, and was ready for the next move type thing. And the Waikato Tainui settlement occurred, and it was something that I could identify in terms of the justice of it and what it was trying to achieve. And I agreed very strongly with Sir Robert's views that education was the key. So it was both an opportunity for me, but also coming into something that was pretty substantial in size as well.
You joined the tribe at a time when it really didn't have the capacity or capability to call on their own skills.
Yes.
And so having people like yourself coming into the tribe with specific skill sets to help was quite unique and new for the tribe.
Yep.
What was it like being a Pākehā coming into a Māori organisation?
In more recent years, I've worked in governance in Māori organisations, as you know, and I always find iwi organisations very welcoming and supportive of Pākehās coming in and not being so strong on the cultural aspects and so forth. There's plenty of challenges in working in iwi organisations, but you have sort of battles and go on and so forth. But the underlying tenor is always just genuine people sort of thing, and overall a shared goal. Yeah.
And when you came into the tribe at the time, what were the challenges that you were confronted with, and what was your approach to address those challenges?
Well, in those early days where I was financial manager, having gone from the Taino Maori Trust Board to a $170 million settlement, so, setting up the accounting systems and the processes and the procedures and where necessary, adding skills in the team, you had to be a bit flexible because things were, like the structure would get altered a bit over time type thing. So it be adaptable to that. And, there was people like Niwa Nuri, who was overseeing the right of first refusal team. And, it's a massive job and a massive opportunity type thing. And it was sort of connecting in with that and so forth. So it was kind of building internal infrastructure in terms of that operation.
And in terms of the challenges that you saw at the time, moving from a trust board structure to a big iwi entity with significant resource, was there an element of the challenge that you felt needed more effort in terms of maybe educating the broader tribal membership about what was happening?
I think a challenge many or most iwi having achieved their settlements is having the breadth of skills to look after that pūtea and to do the strategic planning as to how they want to deploy it and what they want to achieve out of it. And, recruiting skills such as I and others had type thing. But there's also, I think, big challenges with, in terms of advisors and knowing, being able to figure out who you can trust and who's there to, just to sell you something that's maybe not a great proposition type thing. And that sort of thing applies across the investment world. It's not just Maori entities. It's kind of the nature of the investment community. And if you've got money, there'll be plenty of people who want to help you deploy it so they can achieve advantages for themselves.
That was not an area that was well understood in those early days with the tribe. And there was a lot of reliance on external advisors and, potential investments and things like that. Did you observe enough rigour around how opportunities came to the tribe during those early years? And looking back, is there some kind of reflection that you had in terms of a system or control that might have been useful then?
Sir Robert was a dominant leader, and that quite often happens in Maoridom. And I've always had immense respect for Sir Robert and affection for him. He was a great man. And he achieved the first iwi settlement in New Zealand, and that has changed New Zealand permanently for the better and set New Zealand on a journey. And the trustees of the Taino Maori Trust Board, Sir Robert and the rest of the trustees, they had no experience of looking after millions and millions of dollars of money. And that's, that is a challenge for some other iwi as well. I think some, such as Maniapoto, amongst their trustees have a broader range of skills and experience that can really help them on their journey. In terms of actual investment decisions, the sort of thing you need to do is build what's called an investment filter, where you filter through many opportunities that come along, and what are the things that will help the tribe progress towards its goals. And due diligence, like really testing out the investments, stuff on a spreadsheet and in glossy pamphlets means nothing. Anyone can create those sorts of things. You also need to kick the tires on the investments. Like, you have to go and see them and look at them. If it's a property and stuff, and you go and have a look, and it hasn't been maintained, and it's not it's in a much worse state than's portrayed in the photos and so forth.
So back in those early days, those systems and controls were fairly well being developed as the waka was being paddled. So probably on reflection, do you think more could have been done to strengthen those investment pipelines, systems and controls?
Yeah, absolutely. Initially there was Tainui Corporation, which was looking after the income-earning property portfolio, and initially that was kind of contracted out, but I think that worked reasonably well in those initial few years. And then there was Tainui Development, which was more focused on whenua that had commercial development opportunities, property development or so forth, or such as the base ultimately.
What did you observe in terms of the relationship between the different entities, Tainui Development, Tainui Corporation, but also the social political arm of the tribe?
I think it's kind of worked reasonably well in those initial things. I think, there's always probably a bit of competing for space type thing, or we'd like to do this with that property, or, we think this property should sit in this portfolio. But, not major stuff in those first, 2 or so years type thing. I think some of the conflict stuff developed a bit later. In terms of the social stuff, the businesses were largely focused on the businesses of, on the one hand, looking after the rental portfolio and over time developing some properties for sale. The Waikato Raupatu Lands Trust led all, most of the kind of the social side of things. But, you had the board sitting over the top.
Those early years were characterised by some big challenges, a lot of criticism around investments, strong personalities and people moving through the tribe or back to the tribe and the like. But how was it that you took over the reins and became the CE of the tribe?
As financial manager, believe I'm being quite honest in this, that I was the only person who would give contrary advice to Sir Robert. And Sir Robert was the primary decision maker. And over time there were more people around him, such as Jeff and others, including people of huge experience and status in the commercial world, who were prepared to say, that's right, we'll do it. You want it, we'll do it, type thing. And like the Warriors was an example where Sir Robert said to me after it was acquired, I knew what you'd think about it, kept you well away from it.
I think it's important to share some of those insights because there will always be strong personalities with a vision and the passion and commitment to take people's, view towards a destination just dreamed of. But in all reality, every strong personality needs to be tempered with good advisors and good systems, checks and controls. I think 30 years after the settlement, were we to reflect on the checks and controls of strong leadership from a governance and organisational position, what do you think those things absolutely must look like?
Well, I'm a great believer in you get the best outcomes through teamwork and through a variety of perspectives and experience, and that absolutely applies at a board level, and that's part of how you get good governance. That didn't exist at the time. There certainly wasn't those skills and experience of people to say, I'm not sure about this. I think we need to look at it more closely.
I want to, peg in some of my recollection of some of those investments that became quite controversial. There was the investment in the Warriors and then the corporate box and the investment in the hotel properties and the pub. And also there were more domestic investments. the media started to get quite involved
Yep.
and quite
Yep.
passionate about its reporting on
Yep.
all of these things. And while for the purposes of the tribal memory, there was some justification around this, there needed to be checks and balances about the types of investments that would demonstrate value back to the tribe. Is that a bad thing?
But yeah, there certainly need to be those checks and balances. I guess, like, I look at some investments in terms of like scale and impact. So corporate box wasn't a big thing. It was it was a thing you could get attacked on over the media. So that's and corporate box is never going to make you money. That's the reality type thing. Hotel in Sydney, there was some tribal reasons for doing that. Like the Warriors, that cost $6 million. I signed, some years later, the papers to sell it for an amount that barely covered our legal fees. So it was basically, and at that time, it was just bleeding cash, like $300,000 a month. Another very costly investment was purchasing Heartstone's fisheries, which became Raupatu Moana fisheries. That, in my view, and it's pretty indisputable, the price paid for it was at least double its economic value, possibly higher. And that was purchased on behalf of Waikato Tainui by Phil Pryke, and he was paid a substantial commission to do it. And so he was implementing what was requested of him. He, at the time, he was the director and I believe the chairman of Contact Energy, one of the biggest companies in New Zealand. And I struggle with that from many perspectives. So, it's those kind of things. Decent chunk of the losses came through MDC Investments. Sir Robert viewed MDC Investments, that was the high risk, high return part of the portfolio. And Phil Pryke was chairman of that earlier on, but sort of left before it all hit the fan, some significant time before that. Wari Wood-Holmes was the chief executive of it, and Wari had been around, and Jeff Green was heavily involved in it. I don't recall what the losses were out of MDC, but definitely north of $10 million, possibly $20 million, where most of the investments realised close to nothing type thing. And at the end of the day, people should take some responsibility for those sort of decisions.
And that's why the checks and balances in an organisation such as Tainui, and certainly in its financial investment, should be absolutely clear to the people going forward. If I were to maybe probe your memory around how challenging it was to have a contrary view with a strong individual, Sir Robert, but how necessary it was. Can you perhaps help to recall some of the ways or strategies that you had to provide advice, good advice?
I guess, like, I've always believed in providing sort of evidence-based advice. And like, I always got on fine with Sir Robert, and we could have a discussion and a debate type thing, and it was, and we could smile about it type thing. And understandably, I accepted that he was the decision maker. And I think it's relevant to context is, like, I was kind of sidelined somewhat type thing as, some of these things happen. And as I got to the point where I was thinking about leaving type thing, that, I've given my best advice, but I am no longer able to influence the outcomes significantly. I took a job in Raupatu. So I was general manager of Raupatu for something over a year. And it was during that time that the $40 million of losses came home to roost type thing. And sitting over there, and which was in one of the houses across the road from the Hopi base there, over time we could see things were getting challenging and difficult. And we were expecting to get made redundant because we knew there were real cash pressures building up. And then that was at that point that I got asked to come back in as Chief Financial Officer, which I did. And this was 1999. The banks, the BNZ in particular, who were the main banker, were getting increasingly concerned. My assessment was that in a straight Pākehā commercial environment, the banks would have appointed a receiver. They would have put someone in control to recover their money and then hand the remainder back to the entity. Because it was an iwi entity, and I think probably because it was the first settlement, they were extremely reluctant, and understandably, to do that. So what was agreed with them is that a strategy committee would be formed, and the board of the Waikato Raupatu Lands Trust had to follow the advice of the strategy committee. The strategy committee was comprised of Sir Robert, Shane Solomon, Jared Brown from Rudd Watts, and Michael Stiesny. They were, leading there to guide the turnaround. So there was a mix of the internal and external advisors. That's something I've missed that's actually really important, is that during that period, prior to the strategy committee, had been the first elections for the Waikato Raupatu Lands Trust board. So a group of new trustees came in, and I think there's 6 or 7 new ones on a board of 12. And the majority of them were really concerned about the financial situation, and the fact that the organisation was bleeding cash, and there was these significant loans for the bank. So it's from that, and that's where the strategy committee came into it. And then I think there was the split of the board into 2 factions, where 6 wanted to take steps to change things, the way things were happening, and 6 were supported Sir Robert in retaining control. And I guess I'd make the comment that I doubt that anyone other than Sir Robert could have achieved the settlement. But he did not have the experience to be able to make, those best decisions on the financial investment sides type thing. And by that stage, there were a number of people around him who were giving very poor advice.
It's very difficult to comment on that period of time without having a level of emotion attached to the circumstances, the context, the individuals. How did you navigate a role that you had and a responsibility for the tribe with all the surrounding sensitivities that were happening at that particular time?
My focus was always on achieving the best outcome for the tribe. And with my financial background, I had some clear views on what that needed to look like. In my view, the tribe at that stage were split very much 50-50, as was the board. The tribe reflected the board, and the board reflected the tribe. It was very tough circumstances, and one of the things I was always conscious of was, as CFO, was my staff. It was much tougher for them than for me as Pākehā. I was doing I had a job to do with focus type thing. The staff, they were Waikato Tainui and, understandably distressed by the circumstances and the conflict.
Coming back to your point about the staff, my reflection is that you still maintain quite a strong empathy for the people side of the organisation as you were dealing with very difficult circumstances. And the ability to inform people what you were trying to do. As well as observing the amount of sentiment. You put it as 50-50, but there was strong passionate feelings around all of this. How did you get in front of the narrative about what needed to be done because it was necessary, and it wasn't a popularity contest?
No, I always just try to operate with integrity and honesty and front up about stuff. I don't claim to have, say a sharp marketing, political aspect type thing. And I think the time I'd already spent with Waikato Tainui, I think probably a reasonable number of people knew or judged me to be a straight shooter. So, like situations like that could, there's always potential for them to get ugly, and they never did. It comes back, I think, in part to the underlying empathy and whanaungatanga of Māori, which I found across my iwi involvements. I have been in at least one much tougher or rugged or scary situation in Pākehā business world type thing, subsequent to my time with Waikato Tainui. And in fact, Waikato Tainui taught me that I could kind of cope with whatever came up.
The whole experience taught you things. If you were to kind of walk through the things that you learned and the strategies that you've kept as you've engaged with other iwi organisations, what does that look like?
It was clear to me that I had backbone and integrity and honesty. In terms of money and financials, there's no rocket science to it. In terms of looking after money, in terms of strategy and risk and achieving outcomes, there's no magical ways to achieve financial success. Like making money, that's just the facilitator for achieving the social and the wider goals of iwi and of many entities type thing. But you have to make the money first. I've been involved in investments, a wide variety of investments, for over 40 years. I approach all investment stuff really skeptically and cynically because it's people selling you stuff. Doesn't matter if they're dressed up as a investment banker or a stockbroker or whatever type thing. They're just selling you stuff, and it's on you and your team to verify that it's accurate and it fits your purposes.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring you back to the people side of the ledger and ask, who were the kaumātua that were around you at that particular time? Are there any memories of them?
John Haunui was the leading Waikato Tainui kaumātua at that time, and I always had a good relationship with him.
Did you ever have any interactions with Te Ata?
Limited. Been to Turanga Waiwai and into the rooms with the Pounamu birds and so forth, and that were pretty limited.
Iti Rawiri and Miretaka, were they ever around?
Iti Rawiri was certainly around. In the early days, it was, board meetings were all day sort of thing, and we were all there together, and but so certainly had interactions with people across them. With the kingitanga, in terms of my aspect, if you like, was kind of making sure that there was that the appropriate finances was there for their budget and the things they did type thing.
How did you observe the dynamic between the kingitanga and the tribal organisation?
The two are very close. And Dame Te Ata and Sir Robert, were very close. And understandably, Dame Te Ata put a lot of faith in Sir Robert and backed him to achieve the settlement and subsequently,
In terms of the public understanding of those early days of the settlement, do you think there was a very good understanding of what was trying to be achieved?
I think it would have to have been a learning process because, even today, many New Zealanders have no concept that the settlements are, whatever, 3% of what was taken, and perhaps the present discussions over the Treaty Principles Bill might have illuminated some people on the actual factual backgrounds. Because, I put a submission in on that recent bills and I just made a few points, but one of them I said was, at the time Treaty was signed, there was something like 2,000 settlers in New Zealand, Aotearoa, and about 80,000 Māori. you can't tell me that Māori ceded sovereignty. I look at what has gone in New Zealand Aotearoa over the last 30 years as very much a journey, and a very positive journey, decade by decade. I think Māori are making great progress. There's a long way to go. I'm really confident that will continue. You look at the young ones coming through from kohanga and the schools who have a much better understanding of Titiriti and the history than my generation and so forth. And we're going to continue to keep travelling in that direction in a positive way, despite things that happen from time to time.
It's a little bit like the progress of the tribe over the last 30 years,
Yep.
learning along the way, trying to improve on the mistakes that were made, and also trying to improve its opportunity to innovate and not be afraid to innovate.
Yep.
If you were to look back over the last 30 years of the settlement, or let me ask it this way, if you were to cast your mind back to that period of time that you served with the tribe, what are you most proud of? Because they were hard years.
I am really proud of my contribution to Waikato Tainui and its settlement. In terms of achievements, the first thing was repaying the $40 million of debt, so getting the debt down to zero. In fact, the first thing was stopping the bleeding of the cash month by month, so getting some financial stability. Second, repaying the debt. I guess I take a bit of pride, and I wouldn't say fully achieved, but trying to look after the well-being of the staff. And I wouldn't say it was a universal success, but that was important to me, and caring about people. One of the absolutely most pivotal things, and I spent 2 years as CFO, and that was my actual position, but I call myself de facto chief executive because there was no chief executive. I was it from sort of day one of being CFO. Nothing got paid unless I said it's okay to pay it. So the really critical thing for that I look back on was the persuading the board to appoint some hardened, experienced commercial directors to the board of Tainui Group Holdings. And it took me about a year after repaying the debt to persuade the board and get them over the line where they actually did it. And they'd say, yes, we're going to do it. And then they'd just kind of, for different reasons, pull back from it. And those two people were John Spencer, experienced, hard-nosed, chartered accountant, formerly chief executive of New Zealand Dairy Group, and Rob McLeod, chartered accountant, lawyer, and I'd been at university with Rob, so I knew him, and even Ngāti Porou. And one of the things I'd guess highlight to the tribe going forward is that the strength of governance and experience at the over the top of the commercial side is really critical. Previously, Tainui Group Holdings did not have that capability by any, not within a million miles. And from the distance, since I moved on from Waikato Tainui, I've observed at times Waikato Tainui have had some interesting politics and a few sort of ups and downs. But that governance on the commercial side has meant that the business has kept ticking on type thing while the tribe resolve their political discussions and so forth. And I probably almost shouldn't mention this, but I will. We during that time, one of the people who was, Sir Robert's lawyer was Paul Majuri at Russell McVeigh, and they were running around doing all sorts of things. One thing they did at one stage, one weekend, over the weekend, they, on the Monday, they were turned up, a bunch of lawyers from Russell McVeigh in the offices of my staff, my team, and said, over the weekend, we've dismissed, 6 of the board members have been dismissed, and Michael Crawford, he's been dismissed, and we're in control. That could have got ugly. What I said, because I turned up, what the hell's going on here? And what I said to the staff, okay, we're not going to have conflict. I'm just going to withdraw, and I'll get it sorted out. We'll get it sorted out. And like within a few days, High Court judge reinstated the supposedly dismissed board members. But like that sort of things, man, that's blooming unsettling for a bunch of people working there. With Paul and Russell McVeigh, there were 5 legal cases on 5 varied subject matter. Russell McVeigh, they lost them 5-0. It's in some ways it speaks for itself a bit.
That really points to the instability of the political side of the ledger and what was happening at the time. That level of difference about how the tribe would go forward.
Yes, and I guess observers from the outside could say, you should have worked out, you shouldn't have had all that conflict. But in all honesty, to have not had the disagreements and the kind of the court battles, I don't think it could have been resolved any other way. And the court cases themselves, they didn't resolve, they were just steps on the way. But over a period of time, I think things settled down, and ultimately the board were able to kind of reconcile themselves. And I did what I could to assist with that. And one thing I do recall is recommending to the board that they pay Sir Robert's legal bills. And that was just necessary to move forward and kind of rebuild those constructive relationships.
In terms of that period of time. And I want to just recognise just how challenging it was. Do you think that just the whole litigious nature, and there were many more various examples around various personalities and conflicts in the politics of the tribe that took the tribe to court. It didn't stop with that particular scenario. It just carried on for a good period of time. Do you think that we should be how do you think, or what reflection do you have about ensuring we're not doomed to make the same mistakes?
In the commercial world, you have dispute resolution processes, if you like, whether it's, and businesses commit to them, they'll sign contracts saying, okay, well, and because court processes generally take forever, horrendously expensive, and no one ends up being satisfied with the outcome. So those sort of alternative resolution things, to me, an important kind of preemptive aspect is to have an agreement on the strategy type thing, and this is where we're heading, and making sure that you have the skills on board to guide those strategic discussions and then implement the strategy, and very importantly, developing your own people with those skills and experience over time. It's kind of about building that kind of robust structure and understanding type thing, where there's a higher level of buy-in to we're all going forward in this direction together.
A regular health check on the organisation would also help. And the tribe has a dispute resolution that enables tikanga to take its place now.
Brilliant.
So that is I guess the learning from all of that. Whether or not we are in a position to be able to lean more towards tikanga when those personality, kind of more politically motivated tensions come up and it disrupts the governance. Challenges of the board remains to be seen, but I think that is a learning going forward. I'd ask you to think about the improvements to the organisation as a natural course of things to do, and whether you've got any reflections or insights given the governance roles that you have that could support Māori organisations like Waikato Tainui
Yep.
to be better.
Yep. At the board level, looking to have, and whether it's the, the runanga or the trust level or the commercial board or a commercial board level, having the right mixes of skills and experiences as best you can manage those things. So get the people with the capability and potential and develop their skills, put the investment in training and, people with the values and the motivation and,
I think for many ways, we are in a better space now because of all of our experiences.
Yep.
But one of the most important things that the tribe needs to do is tell the fullness of the story.
Yep.
Those challenge years
Yep.
are a part of a narrative that's been lost.
Yep.
Do you sense that the reason for that is because it was just too hard, or is there something else?
I would say quite likely. I'm sure that period was hurtful to many, many people. And you don't always want to talk about things that bring you pain type thing. Oh, no, okay, we dealt with that, we sorted it out, moved on type thing. But I'm really supportive of the tribe wanting to, to look back and reflect and look at what lessons it wants to take forward. Yep.
Well, I can say for myself, my young self would
Yep.
have judged you very unfairly during that time because it was just so emotive.
Yep.
But my mature self,
Yep.
now looking back with a governance lens,
Yep.
really I want to acknowledge the time that you took over and led the waka in a very uncomfortable environment, but also the way that you maintained an unpopular stance in a necessary situation.
Yep.
Not many people will acknowledge that, but the tribe needs to because it's an important part of our narrative. So I just really want to thank you for the time in this interview. And if there's anything else you want to share about your time with the tribe.
I'll touch on two things. One, and I'm aware that Waikato are making some tweaks to their structure in terms of the commercial and the tribal and social objectives aspect. And I'm not close to precisely what those are. I do say just, be very thoughtful and very careful about how you do it. It is really risky to mix, to a significant extent, the commercial objectives and social objectives, because and it happened in the past. You can justify all sorts of things on social grounds in a commercial envelope, and that just don't work. I honestly believe, from my experience, that is probably the biggest challenge of iwi settlements: how iwi decide to get the balance between the commercial, the pūtea, looking after the pūtea and achieving the wider objectives, the housing, the progress on health and education in particular. The other one I'd say is, after I left Waikato Tainui, and I guess it was probably a sign of that the board had reconciled. At some point in the year, I was offered the role of Chief Executive of Tainui Group Holdings, but I turned it down. After having a break to recharge, I went into Fonterra, which I decided that's where I wanted to go, and I went in as a pretty lowly contractor to get my foot in the door, and reasonably quickly got involved, became a permanent employee and involved in a range of things. Waikato Tainui had lost $40 million, and it was all over the front pages of the newspapers. One of the first things I dealt with at Fonterra, and Fonterra had just been formed, was about a year old when I joined, was tidying up the tail end of ventures that had cost them $40 million. That
Never attracted as much media attention.
It wasn't in the media at all until in much more recent times. And, I think it was referenced when they were talking about the losses in China with the dairy farms and so forth. Pākehā businesses are a lot better at keeping their mistakes and challenges under the covers. And I think it's a natural thing of iwi, that there's that transparency and debate and so forth. I wouldn't be at the least bit ashamed about that mistakes were made. We all make mistakes, and I've made plenty. It's the learning for them, which Waikato have done. And Ngāi Tahu, they had their ups and downs, and yep.
I just want to come back to the point that you raised about not mixing the social and the commercial issues. I think what you're alluding to is the one board concept.
It's probably one board and one chief executive. I think, I have no bones in saying, I think if that's the structure that adopted, it's very risky because they are very different skill sets. And which is what it boils down to. You need that, oversight of the commercial ones and saying, right, this is, what we want you to deliver, and these are our values that we expect you to operate by, and so forth.
Can I ask you a futuristic question?
Yep.
And it's 30 years into the future.
Yep.
Waikato Tainui continues to thrive and prosper.
Yep.
What role do you see for the tribe within the broader region? What role do you see the tribe playing?
Oh, very significant. One of the things, back 30 years ago that I recognised and saw as soon as that settlement it meant Waikato had a seat at the table in the conversations in the Waikato and nationally. And despite the challenges, that economic credibility, that's only going to grow. The Maori population is only going to grow. And as I referenced earlier, the Pākehā's community's understanding of the treaty settlements and the reasons for them, that's only going to grow as the younger ones come through. I think the future for Waikato Tainui and for Māori is very bright, and it will continue to build. And one of my fundamental beliefs is that Māori success and achievement and well-being, that's in the interests of every New Zealander. We're all better off if we're all succeeding, and we succeed more by being partners and doing stuff together. It's why New Zealand's such a great place to live.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Can I thank you, Michael, for helping the tribe to tell its story about the settlement journey, some of the difficult challenges, many of the difficult challenges, but also what we need to learn in order to be able to move forward confidently. So thank you, and thank you for your service.
Right.
Ngā mihi ātira ki a koe.
A pleasure. Very happy to spend a bit of time chatting to you. Thanks, Nanda.